When the name of Lorraine Whittaker is mentioned, many immediately think of isolation, tragedy, and pain. She is the woman of such an isolated lineage that she was for decades disregarded by society, a morbid curiosity in the mountains of West Virginia. Daughter of R.Y. and Elizabeth Whittaker, first-degree cousins. The story of Lorraine began with a decision that many cannot understand, but was a common practice in a community where geographical and social isolation defined the lives of its inhabitants. In a small distant town called OD, where the options were limited and almost non-existent marriage alternatives, marriage between close relatives became a practice that, in the eyes of many, seemed necessary. However, for external eyes, Lorraine and her family became a genetic curiosity, an isolated and perpetuating family of a lineage marked by difficulties that no one dared to understand completely. For many, Lorraine is seen as the symbol of the tragedy of consanguinity, as a woman whose name echoes in murmurs and who carries an invisible burden of judgments. The story of your life is not just one of physical and mental difficulties caused by closed genetics. It is also a story of a woman who was marginalized and treated as a curiosity, a distant and misunderstood figure, rejected by the look of a society that never tried to understand her true essence. But what many do not see, and what few have done themselves to understand, is that behind all this image of tragedy and suffering, Lorraine Whittaker is a single woman. A woman who, despite all the adversities that life imposed on her, had a strengthened heart that many have never knew how to recognize. What no one knows is that deep down Lorraine was more than the stigma assigned to her. She was a silent but deeply important figure for her family and community. Its story is more complex, more humanely and beautifully resilient than many could see. Check it out if it is already subscribed to the channel. 3 times a week, I bring real cases of consanguinity, isolated families, and the genetic consequences that need to be understood. Activate the bell to stay on top of more amazing stories full of lessons you won't want to lose. Click subscribe now. Today, Lorraine Whittaker still lives under the weight of the social stigma that carries due to its origin. Daughter of R.Y. and Elizabeth Whittaker, first-degree cousins who got married, Lorraine was and is still seen as a genetic curiosity for society around her. The fact that his mother and father are cousins and have married, creating a lineage marked by consanguinity, remains a cause for prejudice and revulsion for many people. In the present, Lorraine not only carries the burden of being the daughter of a practice that many consider wrong or unnatural, but also to be constantly judged by something they have not chosen, but was imposed on her by the choices of her parents. While some may see consanguinity as a purely genetic question, for many, this origin is treated as sin or as a moral error. Lorraine nowadays is still stigmatized by its genetic origin. The world around him still sees her as a strange figure, and the story of her family is often summarized to a mistake or a genetic anomaly without understanding the true complexity of the situation. For many, Lorraine's consanguineous mother and her marriage to her cousin are issues that generate revulsion, and social prejudice around it still defines the way it is treated. Even in a more informed era about genetic and health issues, Lorraine is not yet seen with empathy, but with the weight of ignorance of a society that does not understand what happened, but judges without hesitation. People continue to look at her suspiciously, and often with a certain distance, as if her origin was something that made her less worthy of being treated as equal. The stigma that Lorraine faces in the present is not just about the physical appearance or the genetic problem she carries. The story of your family, especially the fact that your parents are cousin, is still a source of social exclusion. Although she is an adult woman now, society has never fully accepted her. People who know her still treat her with doubt and distance, often without even trying to understand the true reasons she is as she is. Lorraine, with her physical distortions and communication difficulties, continues to be seen as a marginalized figure, someone who does not fit into social standards. But what few know is that she didn't choose her condition. She did not choose to be the daughter of consanguineous parents. She did not choose to have cognitive difficulties or physical problems. All that Lorraine always wanted was to be seen as a normal person. But SWA rejects her for her genetic origin, isolating her even more. For many, it is a curiosity, something to be observed and marginalized. At the same time, Lorraine still faces the lack of support from doctors, educators, and even social workers. She did not receive the proper treatment to deal with the difficulties that recessive diseases caused in her body and mind. Social neglect with the Whittaker family in the past and even in the present is a reflection of the lack of resources and the isolation lived by it. There was no one to explain what was happening to your body and mind. And even over the years, support for your specific condition is still limited. Lorraine continues to suffer as the options to help her are scarce and the medical community did not do enough to offer adequate solutions. Today, Lorraine still finds herself as an isolated woman. Unlike everyone around her, the emotional loneliness she feels is deep. It still lives in a rejection bubble where it is constantly excluded or treated with distancing. Even though she is an adult woman, she cannot overcome the effects of isolation that began on her childhood. The lack of social acceptance and people's contempt is the greatest emotional barriers that Lorraine faces to this day. The world around Lorraine, unfortunately, still sees her as a curiosity and in many cases as someone who does not deserve to be understood. The stigma of consanguinity and judgment on its origin continues to weigh on it, limiting their interactions and their possibilities to build significant relationships. The people around them, instead of treating it with humanity and compassion, see it only as the reflection of a genetic practice that do not fully understand. The social and emotional barriers are deep, and Lorraine finds herself once again fighting a stigma she has not chosen. Despite his years of life, Lorraine still faces huge emotional difficulties. The weight of its family history and the social prejudice it still carries makes your daily life even more challenging. She fights internally against the feeling of being inadequate and undervalued. In his mind, the judgment of others is reflected as an emotional dam that prevents her from living a full and fulfilled life. The shame imposed by society is a silent gag that prevents it from expressing itself freely. Although she is still a woman who lives with many difficulties, no one sees her like the person she really is. Social judgment prevents her from showing her true humanity. She is not just a woman with physical distortions and cognitive difficulties. She is a person with deep feelings, with desires, and a story that should be told and understood, not judged. But behind the social stigma and the loneliness she still faces, there is a strong, resilient, and lifetime woman. Lorraine has a story that goes beyond judgment and social exclusion. What many do not realize is that it is much more than these visible difficulties. She is a woman of great inner strength with a rich and emotionally complex story that was forgotten by society. Lorraine is not just a woman marked by genetic problems or the judgment of society. When looking at his life in the present, we see someone who, despite being marginalized, carries a silent wisdom and a dignity that was never really recognized. Its true essence goes beyond appearance or physical difficulties. She is a woman with a strong soul, a resilient heart, who despite judgments and exclusion, continues to fight for her humanity, and to live with an unqualified spirit. One of Lorraine's most unknown qualities is her ability to love and dedicate herself. Instead of being seen as a woman marked by genetic tragedy, Lorraine has actually been a caregiver and a mother who always dedicated herself to her family. Despite the judgments and marginalization of society, she has always been faithful to her own, has always been with her children and siblings, taking care of them with admirable patience, often without the recognition she deserved. Lorraine has been a woman of immense kindness who, despite personal challenges, has never failed to show her family unconditional love. Even in his loneliness, in his isolated condition, Lorraine has been a support pillar for her loved ones. She not only embraced her responsibility as a mother, but also showed immeasurable dedication to her brothers and relatives, always willing to take care of them even when she herself was set aside by others. What society does not understand is that Lorraine's strength is not in its appearance or in the difficulty of communication, but in the depth of its love and the ability to take care of others. The way she embraces the difficulties of her life with a warm heart is an example of resilience. Even though idle and treated with prejudice, she continues to take care of those she loves. This side of it, the ability to give love even when it does not receive, is one of its greatest qualities. Lorraine's true greatness is not in her physical distortions or genetic errors caused by consanguinity, but in the willpower she demonstrates every day. She lives in a society that does not understand her and rejects her based on deep prejudice. But she still does not surrender. Instead of being dominated by pain or loneliness, Lorraine continues to fight for her dignity and her humanity. Its inner strength is what keeps it standing, facing physical and emotional difficulties, as well as the lack of understanding that society has about its condition. In the present, Lorraine does not live in silence, but still faces the loneliness of being seen only for her appearance and prejudice that many have against her. The rejection of society is not easy to overcome, but Lorraine continues to resist, finding strength to live and maintain her identity. Despite all the adversities, she is a decent woman, a woman who is not defined by the limitations that society has imposed on her, but by her resilience. Throughout her life, Lorraine has become an introspective woman, someone who started to embrace her loneliness in a way that few can understand. The loneliness she experienced did not break her but made her a deeper and reflective person. She began to realize that society could judge her for what she was but that it did not define her essence. Lorraine, even living isolated in many ways, found a way to understand herself and to accept her difficulties. The inner wisdom she has developed over time is a reflection of her daily struggle to accept and understand her journey. Loneliness, which would often be seen as a difficulty, went to Lorraine an opportunity to grow emotionally and find peace. She did not need the acceptance of society to be happy or fulfilled. Its strength is to overcome adversities alone and find within you what really matters. Even with all rejection, contempt, and isolation, Lorraine continues to stay firm and not allow external opinion to define who she really is. Lorraine's true legacy is not in the judgment of society or the genetic distortions it carries. Lorraine's legacy is in her ability to get up every day to take care of her family with unconditional love and to be a woman of great strength and wisdom. It is a story of resistance of a woman who, even in the face of a life marked by stigma, is not let down. The world sees it in a way, but Lorraine Whittaker is much more than that. It is the definition of resilience and love. Someone who has lived a life full of adversity but never lost the ability to love, to take care, to fight. It is not a genetic curiosity or a tragedy, but a woman who, despite all the difficulties, leaves a mark of courage and humanity. Currently, Lorraine Whittaker and her family, especially with the growing exposure on social networks, continue to live a life where public judgment is still part of her daily reality. Social networks, which are a reflection of modern society, have become a place where personal stories gain space but are often seen from a superficial perspective. Lorraine, as part of the Whittaker family, was exposed to merciless and critical opinions which most of the time are based only on genetic appearances and prejudices. But in the midst of judgment there is always a layer of humanity that many fail to see. While many continue to look with contempt and doubt, there are those who decide to act differently with empathy and compassion. The criticism and destructive comments on social networks do not define the value of Lorraine, but are a reflection of society's lack of understanding on genetic issues and social isolation. However, the story of Whittakers is not limited to criticism and superficial judgments. After the family gains visibility, the story of Lorraine touched the hearts of many good and supportive people who saw the opportunity to help genuinely. These people realized that Whittakers were not a joke or curiosity, but a family with real needs deserving of help and understanding. With this, support actions began to emerge. Financial donations, help material, and support to try to improve the living conditions of the family. These solidarity actions began to relieve some of the family's immediate difficulties. Money donations allowed Lorraine and her family members to improve their housing, buy food, and even receive basic clothes and products. This support was vital to ensure that the essential needs of the family were met. However, although material support was significant, the true help needed for the Whittaker family goes beyond the financial. Despite the good intentions of many, the medical and psychological help that Lorraine and her family really needed remains an unresolved obstacle. Financial support was essential to improve immediate living conditions, but the impact of cognitive and physical difficulties caused by extreme consanguinity cannot only be resolved with donations. Lorraine, as well as other Whittaker family members, still faces the need for expert treatment which is not widely accessible. Geographic isolation and lack of access to specialized doctors remain major challenges. In addition, the absence of psychological support is also a critical factor. The social stigma and the emotional loneliness that Lorraine lived throughout her life have not been solved with specific actions. She still faces the emotional difficulties of being seen as a curiosity for society, and this requires continuous psychological support. The specialized psychological treatment that she and her family need to deal with the impact of her emotional conditions remains an undefeated need. The story of Lorraine Whittaker is not unique in the sense that many isolated and marginalized people face similar difficulties. Its situation reveals how modern society often fails to provide complete support to those who need it most. Help for Lorraine, although significant from some parts of the community, is still limited. The lack of understanding of issues of genetic consanguinity and social isolation prevents help from extending to the most complex areas of medical, psychological, and educational care. True reflection here is about what it means to truly help. It is not enough to give short-term financial donations or aid. What the Whittaker family really needs is continuous support from a structured support network that goes beyond momentary gestures. Deep understanding of your needs must be a priority, and solidarity must become concrete actions aimed at transforming Lorraine's life and long-term family. The story of Whittakers, especially Lorraine, is a reminder that solidarity must be more than punctual actions. It takes a real commitment to the well-being of those who, like Lorraine, live on the fringes of society with few resources and even less effective support. The story of Whittakers challenges us to rethink how we treat the most vulnerable. By recognizing the invisible difficulties, humanizing people, and acting continuously and significantly, we can guarantee that everyone has a chance to overcome adversities and live a decent life. True solidarity is what is given without expecting anything in return, with understanding and committed to building a fairer and more inclusive society. Today you are invited to know a story not only of difficulties and suffering but also of resilience, love, and humanity. Lorraine Whittaker is a woman who, despite all that life has imposed on her, continued to fight, surviving and above all loving unconditionally. Its history is marked by genetic distortion that came from past choices in a society marked by isolation and prejudice. Daughter of Ray and Elizabeth Whittaker, Lorraine grew up in a closed world where consanguine marriages were common. His life, marked by loneliness and social isolation, has been at many times denied by society. And from this, its true essence and its human value were eventually forgotten, reduced to a genetic curiosity. But today, we have the opportunity to change that. Lorraine's story can no longer be a marginalization story. She deserves to be recognized not as someone who lives in the shadow of her family, but as a woman of courage, love, and compassion. The social judgment on Lorraine is, and always has been, superficial. Many people only see it from its appearance and physical distortions caused by consanguinity, but they do not perceive the true fortress it has within itself. Lorraine is not a genetic tragedy, nor should it be seen as a worthless woman. She is a mother, a sister, a daughter with deep feelings and a story that is not just about the mistakes of the past. It is more than the stigmas that society has imposed on it. As a society, we have a huge responsibility to see others with the eyes of empathy and understanding. Lorraine has always been treated as a curiosity, but the truth is that she is a woman of great dignity, strength, and wisdom. Today, you have the power to help change the narrative about it. When leaving loving comments, you can become the light it has always needed to rescue the shadow of the trial. You pod and being the reason why Lorraine feels seen and valued as the amazing woman she really is. Imagine if we all know a story as important as Lorraine's. We did something to help. It's easy to see someone and think that solidarity exists only when we are physically close, but that's not true. In the world we live in, virtual support can also be extremely powerful. Leaving beautiful and positive comments, you will be showing Lorraine that she is no longer alone. She may finally feel that it is not a curiosity, but a truly loved and understood woman. Every word you write can be the emotional turn she needs to find peace with her story. Lorraine, you are not invisible. Your strength is what inspires us all. This is the kind of message she needs to read. A simple positive comment can change Lorraine's day and help heal the emotional wounds it carries. Instead of seeing your story through the eyes of the judgment, let's all choose to see her humanity. She is not just a victim of genetics. She is a woman with heart, soul, and a rich and unique story. It is very easy to fall into the error of looking at Lorraine as an isolated figure and labeling it negatively. But the truth is that by understanding the complexity of your life, we realize that the greatest gift we can give it is the recognition of its true essence. And that's why right now you have a chance to be a light in Lorraine's life. Let us together make your story worthy of empathy and compassion. Let's break the barriers of the trial and support those who need it most. Lorraine is a woman who deserves to be loved, respected, and valued. Your story is not a shame, but an example of resilience, unconditional love, and fight for your family. By supporting it, you help rescue the woman who has always been behind the stigma and who has been forgotten for so long. Now, I invite you to be the change we want to see in Lorraine's life. Leave a support comment, share your story with others, and help spread solidarity. Here are some ready-made phrases for you to leave in the comments and help Lorraine feel more viewed. 1. Lorraine, you are an amazing woman and deserve all the love and respect. 2. Your story inspires us, Lorraine. May your strength be recognized by all. 3. Lorraine, you are more than the stigmas you have faced. You are a true warrior. 4. I am grateful to know your story, Lorraine. Your courage teaches us everyone. In addition to leaving your comments, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with your friends. The more people know about Lorraine's true story, the more she will be rescued from invisibility. Let's make the world see the amazing woman she is, not as a stigma, but as someone who deserves respect and understanding. Its story deserves to be rewritten, and together we can be responsible for this change. The story of Lorraine Whittaker challenges us to look beyond the labels and prejudice. Each of us can be the light that helps rescue someone from a life of judgment and rejection. Lorraine, despite the difficulties and challenges she faced, deserves to be seen, understood, and supported by her true humanity. If you believe everyone deserves second chances and that love and compassion can change a life, then help rewrite Lorraine's story. Be the change. Be the light.